Today was the last day of the funeral for President George Herbert Walker Bush. So the memorial to the greatest generation, the World War II generation, has finished. And that's how I felt about his funeral. It was more for the greatest generation than just for the Bush family, which, by the way, the generosity of the family to take this kind of grief and go through these days and days of formal funeral, I admire the family. They just went through this a few months ago with their mother, but it wasn't as dramatic because this time it was for the president of our country, for America. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent or green or whatever party you want to be, he had been our president. And he was not a bad president. He was a kind, gentle man. He made some exceedingly difficult decisions. And some of the decisions he made were not great, and they did not help us all. And he admitted it. I mean, the honesty he had was something we could really use now. He did try. He signed the American with Disabilities Act, which, as somebody with a disability most of my life, I have utilized those benefits of that. The Clean Water Act, which I live in Michigan, we need our water and we need it to be kept clean. And that's another issue that is being challenged and hurt now. So it wasn't just for George Herbert Walker Bush. But then again it was also for the United States of America. And for remembering that generation, which, by the way, were my parents. My father was in the Merchant Marines in World War II and the U.S. Marines in World War II. My mother was in the U.S. Marines during World War II. My husband's uncles were all in the Army during World War II. My uncles were in the Navy, the Army, the Seabees, and the Air Corps in World War II. So my whole family and my husband's family were part of that greatest generation, as they called it. And those people were so determined to keep our country free that they gave up things that our generation and the generations under us and those under them are not really willing to give up. And as a result, we failed. The baby boomers failed terribly, and they're doing a horrifying job in Congress now. And the generation under us, they're trying. I'm not 100% sure if they get it all. And the youngest generations that are really coming together would be the grandchildren, of my generation. And they're very motivated. They're very young. There's a lot they need to learn still, but they want to keep this country free. And I admire that kind of passion. I admire being able to say, I've done something. I've done something. I'm not just sitting here with my thumb in my mouth crying, pity poor me, which I'm seeing from a lot of people. My hope is that the wonderful feeling of, oh, we don't have to give up. We're fighters in this country. We fight for what we want. We do it in many ways. We do it in peaceful protests. We do it in non-peaceful, unfortunately, protests. We also stand for what we want. We run for elections. We get into politics. We get into government. We get into schools. We work at educating people. We're not a bad country. we've got some bad decision makers who are making us lose the title of the United States of America, land of the free. We are becoming the biggest joke in the world. And the sad part of that is I mourned so hard during this funeral. I cried every day, all the events. And when I heard the 21 gun salutes, which I witnessed 5 times with George's funeral, I felt it was from my parents. It was for my uncles. It was for my husband's family, all his uncles. I felt it for my brothers who are deceased. I felt it for my husband's Uncle Al, who died in the Korean War. I felt it for all the men and women who serve us, who are giving their lives for this country, and they're not getting what they're entitled to. I felt it for every level of humanness there is. I'm just praying in my own belief system, and hoping and wishing that the impact of this funeral, which I do believe the Bush family were totally aware of how important it was for the country to have a funeral for one of their presidents. And for a president who was a good man, a kind and gentle man, who didn't have any trauma drama going on, who didn't have any issues with, theft and sexual behavior and, all kinds of things that just don't work in today's time that we're accepting, which I don't understand why we're accepting it. But it was a funeral for the country. And then they were able to have their own family funeral. But as I watched the Bush family go through this exhausting multiple-day funeral, and it really was. I mean, they had multiple funerals for their dad, but they also had funeral for a former president of the United States. So their family didn't have just for their dad or grandpa or grampy as he was called. They had it for President Bush, our president. And I don't care what political party you belong to, when he was voted in, he was our president. And he was the real president. And he had a resume that, I wish we had available for other people that are going to be running for president. They know the inside out of the U.S. government. They know foreign government. They know government. And I just really wish we had that kind of expertise. We don't, but we have people that are learning. And I can only say thank you, Bush family, for giving me a sense of hope again, because the last couple of years I've been believing and feeling, and I don't know so much believing because I have never fully quit on anything, but I've been feeling like we're losing and that we're going to become no longer the United States of America. We're going to become a territory of a foreign power that doesn't care what our beliefs are or our customs or other things are. So, thank you. I would like to thank the family of George Herbert Walker Bush for sharing your grief, your love, and your compassion for your father, but for the United States of America. Thank you.